Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have my January wrap-up for you. I was able to bust out 12 books this month, which is really good for my goal of 30 books for the year. So I'm just going to go through everything that I read and try to give a little bit of a summary of what I felt about it and try not to keep this video too long. So let's get started. So the first book I read in January was Splintered by A.G. Howard. This is a retelling of Alice in Wonderland with a darker twist to it. We follow the main character Alyssa. She's a direct descendant of Alice Little, who's the original Alice from Alice in Wonderland. And so we kind of follow her story through finding out about her past, finding out about Wonderland. She goes to Wonderland and has an adventure, and then we kind of learn a little bit more about her her family lineage and just things that are going on in her life. I really enjoyed this book. I don't hear a lot of buzz about this. I'm not sure if it's because it's older or what, but I really liked this book. I'm an Alice in Wonderland fan so much, but I really love retellings of it. I like a twist on a story, and it makes you think differently, and I really liked this one. And then there was one big plot twist in it that I didn't see coming that I don't feel like they kind of handled it as well as they could have. It kind of made me, I read through it and then I had to go back through and read it again to make sure I understood what they were saying. But overall, I did like this book. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5, just because of those few little points that I didn't care for, but I really like this book and I will be glad to read it again in the future. The next book I read in January was Matched by Ali Condi. This is a part of a trilogy, which is the Matched trilogy. So basically this is set in a dystopian, futuristic kind of era where everything is decided by the society that you live in. So they decide what you eat, they decide what you wear, they decide even how you die, and this book being about who you marry. So in this one we meet our main character, Cassia, who she goes to her match ceremony and is matched with someone who she's very excited about, but then somehow later on when she goes to rewatch that, she realizes that she's seeing another face on the screen, and it's actually someone she knows as well. So you follow her journey in this first book of her really figuring out, was this a mistake or am I supposed to be with this other person? And it really is about her figuring out who she is, what she wants to become in society, and then also who it is that she loves. Throughout this love story though, you also get to see that there are cracks in the society. Things are happening that kind of foreshadow bigger things to come in the rest of the trilogy. I really enjoyed this book. I finished it quite quickly and I plan to read the rest of the trilogy in February. But I think I did give this a 5 out of 5. I really liked it. I don't feel like it was a slow read at all. I sped right through it. I like the twists in it that make you look back and reflect on what they call the past, which is actually our present. So I really did like this. I like dystopian kind of novels. This was the second book I read in January. The third book I read in January was Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. Now I'm not going to talk too much about this. I have a full review I will link down below for you guys to check out. Overall, I liked this book. There was a few things in it that I kind of had a problem with. All in all, I gave this a 3.5 out of either 3.5 or 4 out of 5 stars. I can't remember which on Goodreads, but I really did enjoy it for the most part. I will link my review down below so you guys can hear a little bit more about that one. The fourth book I read in January was Unhinged, which is the second book to the Splintered series that I just talked about. Now, this book was a little bit more disappointing to me than the first one. I'm not quite sure if it's because I wanted the same kind of things I got from the first book, which I don't feel I got, or I really don't know what it was that kind of disappointed me about this book. But this time, instead of being in Wonderland, this one takes place in Alyssa's world, in the human world, and she's still struggling between knowing where she belongs. Then of course there's still the love triangle going on in it, but I feel like that was a little strained, and maybe that's why I didn't like this one as much. The ending of this book, it pissed me off because I just did not like how it ended, and I know it was a cliffhanger to get you ready for the third and final book, but still I did not like this. I was so irritated by at the end of this book that I decided I wasn't reading Ensnared, which is the third book, until February because I needed a break from it. But I think I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars just because I was a little disappointed with some of the how the book kind of went along. I still liked it because there were points where I was really happy about what was happening in the book. And I really think it set us up for that final book in the trilogy. But this probably, out of all the books I read, might have been my least favorite book of January. The fifth book I read in January was The Queen of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. I love this book so much. It's kind of a heifer. It's a little bit of a big book, but I blew through this in a day. I loved it so much. The only negative, or I would say confusion with me for this book, was the timing. It feels like it's supposed to be in the past, like a historical setting, but then it talks of things like cosmetic surgeons, and it talks of the writings of Rowling, like J.K. Rowling, and then it talks of like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. And so I'm just like, well, maybe it's supposed to be in the future, but it's supposed to have like reset time, and it's supposed to be kind of like what the past was, but in the future. I'm not sure. And maybe that talks about that in here and I just missed it. I'm not sure. So this book is about a young girl named Calcia, and she is the descendant of a queen of the Tyrling. And what happens is you find the guard coming to the place where she was raised to bringing her back to the keep so that she can claim her throne. The issue is there are more people out there who want to kill her and have her not take the throne than there are who want to help her. So the first quarter of the book is her journey trying to get to the keep, and then the rest of it's her trying to establish herself at the keep. I have to say that this reminded me, I know a lot of people say that the Fallen Kingdom series by Morgan Rhodes is like the YA version of Game of Thrones, but I feel like this had a lot of the Game of Thrones elements to it, and I really enjoyed it. I loved the characters. I liked that there was different points of view, that you could kind of see what was going on. I loved the fetch in this book. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to read more about him. I really hope he's really big in the next 2 books. I liked seeing the character development for Calcia. I thought that it was really great to read that she was plain, like, if that makes sense. She wasn't this tall, blonde, bombshell, kick-ass assassin. No, she was this average girl who couldn't use her looks to get ahead. She had to actually use her mind and her heart and her strength to get ahead, and I really enjoyed it. The next book I read in January was The Selection by Kiera Cass. Now, I did show you guys this in my haul for January. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was definitely a little bit different from what I had been reading in my other books. But basically, this is what I consider a YA version of The Bachelor, but just in book form. And we follow our main character. Her name is America Singer, and she is chosen to be part of the selection process. And she's only going there to try to help her family because you do get paid to be part of the selection series. And the cool thing about this is I really like how they talked about the caste systems, and it tells you a lot about the world. So there really is a lot of world building in this one, and I feel like it gives you a really good background of where they are at that time. I liked the dynamic between her and Prince Maxon, and I love the dynamic between her and some of the girls. I feel like for being a YA version of The Bachelor, they did really well of not making the girls super catty and really like against each other. I mean, there was a few points where it might have been a little bit like that, but they really were very mature, very well behaved for their age, I guess you could say. I believe I gave this one a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. The next book I read in this month was Cinder by Marissa Meyer. Now, I have to say that I thought this was going to be the most disappointing book for me in January, but it ended up not being that. This is a futuristic kind of sci-fi retelling of the story Cinderella, and this is part of the Lunar Chronicles series, for those of you who don't know about that. This basically, for me, it was hard for me to get into for the first probably the first quarter of the book, because I'm not a sci-fi fan really, so getting past some of the cyborg elements and some of the things like that was just a little hard for me. So, but I was told if I pushed through and got through this, I would love the rest of the series, and I actually did enjoy this book towards the end. It got to be about the middle of the book when I started to really get into it. I believe I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars just because it wasn't necessarily my favorite. The next book I read in January was The Elite by Kiera Cass. This is the second book in the Selection series. This book for me was probably my least favorite out of the trilogy. I just feel like, kind of like with Unhinged in the Splintered series, the second books just really piss me off. There's always something that kind of just irritates me. And for this one, it was all the back and forth. I'm not going to say what the back and forth was, but you'll know when you read the book, I'm sure. This is still following America Singer and her process of being the selection, but this time there is a love triangle because someone has come back from her past, plus she's still trying to decide her feelings for Prince Maxon. And there were so many times in this book where I just wanted to reach through it and smack America. I'm just like, will you just get your your head on straight. Like, it was kind of annoying, her whininess at times. And I think I only gave this a 4 out of 5. It was a good book, and I do feel like there was a lot of other elements that are really leading up to the finale that really helped to make that finale so good. But I really was just super annoyed with America's attitude in this book and the way that she was acting. I mean, I know she's only 17, and I know this is supposed to be like a love story, but I just wanted to be like, the next book we're going to talk about is The One by Kiera Cass. Yes, I did read this entire trilogy of the Selection Trilogy in January. I could not put these books down. This finale was exactly how I wanted it to go, and I'm still I remember so much of it that I know this will probably stick with me for a while. So this is the final book in the America Singer story about her being in the selection. And so many things happen in this book that just kind of give you closure and give you a really good perspective on what's going to happen in the future, or what would happen in the future for these guys. The love story ended how I wanted it to, which was great. There were, at the very, very end, 2 things that shocked me. I go, like, I gasped, and I was like, oh no, that did not just happen. And it was sad when they happened, and I didn't see them coming. So that, for me, as much as I disliked that, I was sad about what happened. I was really happy to see that that had come in the book, because that was an element I didn't think I would see. Probably out of all of them, this is my second favorite of the series. I loved watching the relationship between America and both the guys change, and how they both developed into what they eventually would become. I love the friendships that were made, especially in this book. It was such a positive image for young girls to read this and be like, okay, you can be friends with girls your age, even if, you know, boys are involved, and that kind of thing. So I really enjoyed that. I believe I gave this 5 out of 5 because I really did like this book. I liked it so much better than The Elite, and I think that this ended in probably the best way it could have. The next book that I read in January is probably the book that broke me the most, and it was Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. Now, when I say that this book broke me, it broke me because I loved this book. I loved this book, even though I wanted to throw it. Halfway through the book, something very exciting happened that I was super happy about, but then directly after, something devastating happened that really shook me, like, the whole day. Like, I had to set this down for almost like a 12-hour period and not look at it because I was so upset. Basically what this book is, this is the second book of the Throne of Glass series. It's hard for me to tell you guys a lot about this book because it is the second in a series, and so I don't want to say too many details, but I will say I gave this book a 5 out of 5 because if a book can rock me as hard as this book can, then the rest of the series has to be amazing. And this book shook me because it made my heart explode with happiness, and then it broke it into a million pieces. And it's been a long time since the book has made me feel like that. So I love this book. I love seeing probably my favorite part of this entire book wasn't even to do with the love story, wasn't to do with the friendship. It was the character development of Selena. I loved watching how awesome she became. Everything I see in this book of how she really is as an assassin is what I was hoping to see in the first book in Throne of Glass. So I was super impressed and excited that they showed more of that in this book. I loved it so much. Almost done, guys, I promise. Alright, the next book I read was City of Bones, the first book in the Immortal Instruments series, and can we just say that this is my new obsession? Like, I know that I talked about Throne of Glass being one of my favorite series of the year, and I really think it will be, but I can't get this world and these books out of my head. Like, I love it so much. Read this in like a 12-hour period, and I loved it. I loved it so much. I love the Jason Clary dynamic, and what happens towards the end, I was like, no. We start with meeting Clary Frey. She is just turning, I believe, 16. She's soon to be 16, and she is learning about the fact that her mom was part of this secret Shadowhunter world. And so she's also finding that she has Shadowhunter blood in her, and so she's part of this world as well. She is starting to realize that the people around her who've been around her whole life are kind of not who she expected them to be, but also that she has so many memories that her mom had hidden from her to protect her. So throughout this book, you get to really follow her as she learns things about herself and about her world and about her mom that she had no idea about. And you get to just watch this journey of all these kids, I say kids because they're 16, 17, 18, find out who she is and what she's capable of doing. You watch the dynamic between her best friend, Simon, who loves her, and Clary as she's realizing this. And then you also kind of see her dynamic with Jace, which, swoon. So I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. And then the last book that I read in January was City of Ashes. So being the second book in this series, I'm not going to give too many like exact things that happen, but I will tell you the things that I loved. I gave this a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads because I loved this book even more than City of Bones. The character development in this book is phenomenal. You get to see more of Jason Clary and them kind of adjusting to what their new roles together are. You get to see Clary and Simon's relationship change, which is kind of cool. You get to know more about Alec, and you get to find a little bit more about who he is and who he wants to be in their little group. You get to see more Magnus Bane, and I love Magnus. I feel like this book was more focused on Jace than it was on Clary, and I actually liked that because you learned a lot about Jace in this book and how he feels, also what kind of person he is, and I really enjoyed that because I think Jace is my favorite character of everybody I've met so far. So this was by far my favorite so far of what I've read between this and City of Bones, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the series has in store. Okay guys, I know this video was a little long, but I really had to tell you guys some of the things I loved about the books I read this month in January. If you guys did a January wrap up, let me know down below so I can go check out your channel and see what you read this month. I will be having my February TBR up probably in the next day or two, so keep an eye out for that. And until my next video guys, I will see you later. Bye!